Yeah, man, this is the Cutting Edge on Irie FM. Roger Concrete Asphalt, holding the fort for Muta. Yeah, so it's Ruta tonight. So we're here in May 15. So we go until 2 o'clock. So it's like saying, the more things change, it's like the more they remain the same. And sometimes it sounds like a scratch recording on the radio, but students of history know the great civilizations of blacks in the past, and to see where we are nowadays, especially in the last 400-500 years, where we hardly know ourselves. We still don't take on to ourselves Africa as our motherland, like how the Chinaman take on himself China as his motherland, the India take on himself India as his motherland, the Englishman take on himself England as his motherland, and we can go on and on. We black people still believe Africa is backwardness. When we remember what happened in 1885 with the scramble for Africa, and when we realized that no black man was at that table in Berlin, Germany, carving out Africa for themselves because they were broke and needed all the help and the finances and the resources to enhance their societies. And look at where they are today, and look at what they have exploited, where that continent is today. We are in a very sad state up to this day, because we still can't put our satellites up in the sky. The one man who tried them killing, which Gaddafi, the man who tried to set up him communications system to go round the established imperialistic system, them kill him. We see the same thing where the imperialistic system is pressuring the leadership of Venezuela for the people to rebel, but apparently the people still holding firm down in Venezuela despite all of the economic hardships being imposed on the people because they don't like a regime. So what the imperialistic do is what they usually do. They infiltrate, they go into these societies, they infiltrate the opposition, the people, and them rise up the opposition to rebel, pose crunching economic sanctions so that the people can't take it anymore and then rebel against the regime that is there. And it's the same thing. Venezuela has the largest oil reserves in the world. Right now they are suffering because of economic sanctions, not by their own will, but by the will of the imperialistic system that still dominates today. All right, we're going to a special feature. In fact, it's called Hidden Colors. It's a part 4, and it's documented as one of the best black documentary in terms of historical facts and, where we are today and where we should be heading. We're going to play a couple parts tonight. So we're not going to do much talking. We're just going to go straight to this documentary. Very important for us in this time. Hidden Colors, they call it. And it is documented as the best black documentary up to this day. This is the Cutting Edge on Irie FM.
We start talking about discrimination, we start talking about segregation, we start talking about Jim Crow, we start talking about apartheid, we start talking about police brutality. These are all symptoms of white supremacy.
The more insecure white men become, the more they feel a need to exert their superiority, their power and their force. And so the one obvious victim of white rage has always been black men.
White people actually love us. They really do. They want us here. They love us not in the sense that they respect us or want to treat us fairly. But they love us the way a master loves his dog.
There's a big difference between being a slave and being enslaved. Okay? Enslaved is mental. Okay? Slave is physical.
If you look at black America and you look at black men and put them in two categories, there are those who are popular and then those who are great.
Racism is the raping of a continent, of a humanity of people, of materials and resources, and using them to enrich yourself and validating that for the rest of time.
Any black man who stands for his people, any black man who is against the white supremacist structure and is willing to stand by any means against any threats is indeed going to be considered a terrorist.
Because as long as African people were in charge of the planet, there was harmony. There was no wars between China, Japan, the American Indians, the Caribbean. As long as we were in control, there was harmony on the planet Earth.
You know, I often say when I lecture that the African that got on that boat is not the African that got off that boat.
When you conquer a civilization, you're actually conquering their God. Because what do? You change the name of God once you change their religion, once you change their culture.
There's a bitterness and an anger towards black people for not allowing themselves to remain in slavery so white people can feel privileged.
White supremacy is the only religion that isn't a religion. However, it is the most powerful religion on the planet.
At the Getty Museum out here in Los Angeles, there is a painting, an illustration from the 1400s, Moses defeating the Moors. And in the illustration, you see African people who are the Moors in Europe ruling. They're in a castle and they're battling white Europeans. And the reason why they named the painting Moses defeating the Moors is because the Europeans at the time, when they were going through the Inquisition, when they were going through the Reconquista, when they were getting the Africans called the Moors out of Europe, they had a religious undertone. And what they would do, they would draw stories from the Bible and tie that into their current struggle. And that's one of the things that gave them so much momentum. There was a religious undertone to it.
The Africans of Europe originally came out of the Moors, came out of North Africa, out of the area that's known as Morocco, ruled that area called the Iberian Peninsula for centuries. And it's interesting because what most people don't realize is that the Moors had brought to Western Europe, before Europe even had developed the technologies to do a lot of the things that they had done. And when the Moors had been defeated in 1492, that expulsion of the Moors, they had moved into areas that were now considered Western Europe. But they brought with them a lot of the technology, the science, the astronomy, irrigation for being able to develop these lands. And that got erased out of history altogether. And I think that's part of the challenge now is to put that knowledge back into the mainstream so that people understand who the Moors really were.
There's evidence of about 150 Moorish castles that are still there in Spain. And if you go to those castles, they will have a bilingual description where they will tell you this was a Christian castle, but it was originally a Moorish one, and they'll tell you when it was Moorish and then when it became Christian. The churches in Spain were originally mosques. They will tell you the period where they were originally mosques and which period they became churches.
The Moors then, when they came into Europe, they had already had elements of ancient African wisdom which allowed them to advance in ways that the Europeans had never imagined. And so in order to survive in this hostile environment, they had to go underground. The same thing happened with the Europeans, who also were close to the Moors and other Arabs who had pieces of this knowledge. They found that this information allowed them to reinterpret the history of the world, the science of the world, and that conflicted with Christians, specifically the Roman Catholic Church. So they also had to ban those people, and that led to the development of what we now call today secret societies, or more specifically, societies of secrets. And those secrets were the the ancient educational knowledge that had been developed in Africa thousands of years earlier.
Islam will rise up in the course of history. By the 6th century, will cut off Europe from world trade by dominating North Africa and the Middle East. Europe was cut off totally from Asia, India, and Africa in terms of trade and access to wealth. So Europe would plunge into what we call the Dark Ages. But it was an economic depression that led to a complete breakdown of society. When they break out of that, they break out with a vengeance that we will never, ever again be in this situation. That breakout comes in the 1400s with the Portuguese. And they will wreak vengeance on the rest of the world to control trade routes, economic territories. Where is the wheat grown? Where is the gold? Where is the barley? We will get control of these things because we will never be caught in the Dark Ages again.
In Cuba, they have a Spanish dish. It's called moros y cristianos, which means Moors and Christians. And this dish consists of white rice, which is the white Christians, and black beans, which represents the black Moors. So this theme of a racial battle disguised as a religious battle, that's still in popular culture today.
When you conquer a civilization, you're actually conquering their God. Because what do? You change the name of God once you change their religion, once you change their culture. So the name of God is based upon how you create God. In other words, my perception of God now rules.
It's initially about greed, but it's about greed coming from a culture. European culture has always been a war culture. Going back as far as you can go back to the farthest Germanic tribes, to the Vikings, the culture has been based on dominance, destruction, and death. And if you can carry that out against another people, you were the victim. They did not have a religious concept where the value of human lives was significant in the way Africa and Asia put human life first and dominance second.
The oldest human beings on this planet came from Africa. As these Africans migrated out of Africa and traveled northward, they were trapped behind a wall of ice during the Permian Ice Age 40,000 years ago. And through the process of speciation, they lost their melanin, became so-called European or Caucasian. But the other thing that's not often talked about is in losing the melanin, they also lost this quality that we refer to as the soul, this substance that civilizes you, helps you to see your fellow human being as a fellow human being. So now with the absence of the civilizing molecule, the civilizing substance, if you will, they saw people as objects to be found, discovered, controlled, manipulated, and wiped out if necessary in order to ensure your survival. So that is the driving force, and that's the major difference between the two groups of people.
Billy Fuller came out with a book called The Compensatory Code Concept, which he introduced the idea of white supremacy being a religion. And by saying that white supremacy is a religion, that means that it's a belief that's backed up by power, that's backed up by action, and that action and power negatively affects people who are of melanated descent.
The relationship between black and white Americans, it's almost like an abusive marriage where each partner needs the other. A husband that beats his wife, sometimes he may love his wife. He don't want her to leave. He wants her to stay in the relationship and keep getting beat. And she may also be codependent as well and really, really love her husband, be more loyal than a woman who's being treated well down the street. Why? Because she knows, in her mind, she knows her place. And her place is not one of dominance, it's one of subjugation.
The genetic signature and the mind of the genetics has the will to continue, and that it becomes strongest when puberty hits. The will to continue to procreate becomes so strong that you would kill for it. So the genetics of a man who in his mind fears the death of that thing that makes him unique, he will become as vicious as necessary to save and preserve that.
Well, Sheikh Anta Diop teaches us about the the Sun people and the Ice people. So what gave them the momentum is psychological disposition that came out of that Ice Age. So for Sun people, African people, what was their psychological disposition? Living in the warmth, very little clothing, could just go outside and pick a fruit, as Dr. Ben would say, because there was this abundance. Whereas for Ice people living in the caves and hills through the Ice Age, developing that disposition, the first thing they had to go out and do is kill.
Imagine if a group of battle-hardened soldiers from Vietnam who've been in Nam for 10 years, walked into a church where everybody's loving and hugging and being peaceful. Who's going to win that battle? Who's gonna eventually dominate that church? The soldiers are, because they're gonna come with weapons. They're ready to fight. They've gone through hell. They've got battle tactics in hand. The people in the church may not even know they're in a war. That's what I see when I look at Europeans versus the rest of the world. Europeans have treated the world horrifically. We know that. What they've done in Africa, in South America, North America, etc. But if you keep going further back, you look at how they treated each other, it's astonishing. I mean, they basically had about 1,000 years of complete ignorance, savagery, self-destruction, community destruction.
We also got to be very clear about the terms we use, because when I use the term white supremacy or white supremacist, that's not to say that all white people are racist or all white people are white supremacists. That's incorrect. But the people who do choose to practice white supremacy are more powerful than the ones who are not. And a white supremacist is someone who believes through speech, thought, or action that they should be in a superior position over people who are non-white.
When you're constantly at war, your battle tactics are going to be stronger. You're going to have more weapons and more advanced weapons. So they then take this ideology, as well as this weaponry, as well as this skill set into the world, and they go to places where resources are plentiful. So you're not fighting for territory necessarily in Africa or in North America. Native Americans really were not big on the idea of even trying to own land. Like, no, the land is here. The land's for everybody. The buffalo, there's plenty of buffalo. Just kill what you need, right? So you've got people kind of with this mindset that's not prepared for this sort of, savage, battle-hardened mentality. So it's really easy prey for the Europeans.
Well, as it relates to domination on a physical level, as it relates to torture, murder, mayhem, as it pertains to a society that has no order and arrangement, then they would have some form. If you look at the word dominance, they would have the word dominance. The question is, as it relates to honor, integrity, and dignity, is that the type of dominance that you want? If you want to create the type of society that inbred is about to implode on itself because of the nature of the conditions you've put on people, then you would have to use the word dominant. And I would use the word dominant. But if you're looking for the society that I believe is balanced within the forces of nature, then they are not dominant. In fact, they are inferior to the fact, because eventually nature is going to take back what they attempted to steal. You cannot cancel the future. You can only postpone it.
One thing that the white supremacists learn how to do is pretend to practice certain religions that other melanated people practice all around the world, but their real religion is white supremacy when you peel the layers back. Because when you look at all of the religions, all of them are dominated by white supremacy now. So what's the real religion? The real religion is white supremacy.
Through this religion of white supremacy, the closer you are in complexion to this ruling entity, then the higher you are up in the pyramid. And so when Europeans left Europe and came to America, they had an opportunity now to be higher up on that pyramid. And so once they got here, a poor man in Europe, a poor Irishman, the Irishmen were looked upon by Europeans as the niggas of Europe. They can come to America and they can amass power, wealth, and respectability. As a matter of fact, George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, and those guys, they wouldn't have made it in Europe, but they can come here and adapt that same mentality and then open the door for other poor Europeans to come here and benefit from whiteness.
Yeah, man, the cutting edge here on IRE FM. Yeah, we're listening to a very interesting documentary. In fact, it is documented as one of the most successful black documentaries of all time. Of course, there are lots and lots of successful black documentaries, but this one is a very special one. Hidden Colors. So we'll continue with the Hidden Colors here on the cutting edge.
So the Rahowa is a term that means racial holy war. It was popularized by a white extremist named Ben Classen. Now also Ben Classen, he wrote a book called The White Man's Bible, where he goes into great detail about how to eliminate these so-called mud people, meaning black people. So these white supremacists, they have all types of doctrines and code words and books and paraphernalia and information out here on how to subjugate black people and non-white people around the planet.
Christianity that is being reintroduced to Africa is worthless to Africa. The Islam that is being introduced to Africa and used still as a form of slavery in Eastern Africa is worthless to Africa.
Africa created all of the world's religions, from agnostic to Zoroastrianism, came out of the mind of Africa. So the idea of the missionary, and this is the piece that we always have to look at, because when they first came to Africa, those of Eurasian descent, they did not come physically. They came spiritually. And when they came spiritually and they got the indigenous peoples to embrace their faith system, then came the teachers that then indoctrinated them from an educational perspective. And after they had your mind and after they had your spirit, the physicalness was only a mop-up operation.
Throughout history, people who have been captured have always been allowed to convert to the religion of their captors. But black people have not been allowed to do that. Black people have been trying to do that for the last 500 years. Black people have been trying to convert to what they think is the religion of the oppressor, which is Christianity. But that's not the religion of the oppressor. The religion is white supremacy, because if it was Christianity, the churches that we see today would not be the most segregated places in the planet. Church is the most segregated place in the world. You have black churches and you have white churches. If you're a Christian, there should not be a black church and a white church. There should just be a church. So if we have white churches and black churches, the reason why we have a black church is because we have a white church, and we have a white church because we have white supremacy. So white supremacy must be the real religion.
1822, when Champollion deciphered hieroglyphics, it made it possible for the first time in about 1300 years that people could now go into Kemet and read the writings, the Medinetra, on the temples or on the papyri. And once they began to read that writing, they began to understand that everything that they had been teaching Christianity is a lie and based on African concepts that had been created thousands of years earlier.
In the Bible, they have a Genesis story. And the Genesis story said in the beginning, God was the Word, and the Word was God, and God created the water and the land, and the darkness and the light, and the human, and etc. Well, that story almost paralleled the story in the coffin text and the book of the coming forth by day, which we call the Book of the Dead. They also have a Genesis story, almost word for word, like the Christian Genesis story. So actually, when you look at Christianity, it is a warmed over version of Kemetic theocracy.
One example is a book called the Book of Amenemope, which is an instruction text written by the ancient Egyptians. And that instruction text was copied word for word as Proverbs 22 2023.
14 words, that's a doctrine and that's a slogan by white extremists all around the world. That means we must secure the existence of our race and a future for white children. And this is a slogan that they use, and it's a code that they use. So whenever you see white extremist groups who have the number 14 tattooed on their arm or anywhere on their bodies, that's what they're referencing. They're referencing this code 14 along with the number 88. The 88, that's a number that represents the letter H, because H is the 8th letter of the alphabet, and the H means Hail Hitler. So these are little code words that the white supremacists send to each other.
The Bible itself, when you look at the word, comes from the word Byblos. And Byblos was the capital of what we call Phoenicia, which today is Lebanon. And when the Greeks went to rewrite the books of their teachers, the African peoples of Kemet, they went to Byblos to get their paper to write and rewrite the books. And when they did that, the name of the book became the place where they got their paper to buy the book.
Religion comes at the end of a sword or at the end of swords, where everybody's been decimated and brutally annihilated. And after that type of brutality, you'll accept anything. And your conqueror can tell you your gods don't exist, because look at you, you're dead and in the street.
Once that Catholic Church breaks away, the church moves into the dominance when we see Constantine arise as an arm of a military government. So the Catholic Church then becomes the rationale, the theological rationale for imperialism and dominance.
If you look at a cathedral, a Catholic cathedral, if you're looking at it properly, you know you're looking at a fortress. They had towers at the end, and at the top they had this bell to warn the sentries, this warning when attack is coming. It is nothing but a fort. But to us, a Catholic cathedral is a church. But it is a military fort. That's why they had the tower up there for the sentry to ring it when they're coming for their attack. That's why they ring the bell.
One tool of the white supremacists is to use what I call the 3 M's. The first M is the missionaries. The missionaries go in there first, and they con people. They go in there and act like they're part of some type of religious organization, and they appeal to the spirituality of melanoid people. And the second thing they do is bring in the merchant class. After the missionaries come in, they say, we need to bring in our products, we need to bring in our people to sell things and to use some of the resources here. And then the third thing they bring in are the military. They bring the military in to then subjugate and take over the land and decimate the people for centuries to come.
If you have anything, it has to be bipolar. If you have a church, you better have a military. If you have a store, you better have a military. You can call it security if you want. Everything comes with the male principle. And we have a church but no military. See, when you build that church, you gotta have a military. You should build a military and a church at the same time. It has to be bipolar.
Religion's always the tool that's used. It's being used right now. That's one of the main strategies used to conquer a people, is to destroy their religion, make them question their own spirituality, destroy the cultural artifacts that go along with it. That's the way. There's a book called The Grand Chessboard by Brzezinski, who once was he was the foreign policy advisor to Jimmy Carter. And what he told him was, if you want to take over a people, you destroy their culture and you destroy their religion and you destroy the artifacts that they create.
As the world expands, meaning our involvement in the rest of the world by Europe, sees that the world of color makes up 3/4 of the planet. So you need some troops. So the white-skinned non-whites, you're going to attach them to you. So you're going to make them honorary Caucasians. So now Jews are honorary Caucasians. Irish are honorary Caucasians. Italians are honorary Caucasians. Eastern Europeans are now honorary Caucasians. That means you're now honorary Germanics.
White supremacy, again, is a religion, and other races of people are converted into that religion because people can't really define what a white person is genetically. See, it gets real tricky when you try to talk about what is whiteness from a genetic standpoint, because certain people who are white today were not white 50, 60 years ago. The Irish were not white during the 1800s. They became white. They were allowed to be white later on. Many Italians and Greek people, they were not not considered white until later on. Jewish people, many of them were not considered white till later on. So what happens is the white supremacists, when they feel that numbers are dwindling, they allow other groups to convert into whiteness. And in order to convert, they make it their duty to take on the mindset where they want to mistreat and subjugate people who are non-white.
Magazine has these cool pieces. They did a piece where you rent a white person in China. You rent a white person. So there's a former New York City police officer, doesn't know diddly about dude, gets up, gives a speech at a medical conference to Asian people who really are doctors. But because he's white and because he speaks proper English, meaning white English, he's always going to have a job.
After the 1960s, after 1965 in particular, when black people were fighting for civil rights, the white supremacists wanted to create a backlash against that, so they allowed different immigrant groups to come over to the United States with the Immigration Act of 1965. And one group that they allowed to be the model minority were Asians. We started to see an influx of Asian, Korean, all types of people come in, and then the white supremacists started to hold the Koreans and Asian groups up and say, hey, look at these people. They just got here. They're doing better than those black folks. It was somewhat of a way to shame the black population by holding up the Asian population and looking at them and pretending that they were the model minority, when just years before, Asian people were mocked and subjugated just like other groups. If you look at media back before the 1960s or before the 1970s, they would portray Asian people with glasses and buck teeth and with the Fu Manchu, walking around being silly and goofy.
If you come from anywhere in North Africa, don't care how black you are Caucasian. Until the 1970s, if you came from Trinidad, you were Caucasian. I remember when I first saw it, an ironic, beautiful lady. I'm working in, I get out of the military, I get a job at the post office. I'm doing mail across from this magnificently beautiful sister. So I'm trying to, brother, trying to make a flag. She told me, you don't deal with black folks. You don't speak to black people. So I went, look, what's wrong with you? She said, because I'm Caucasian. And she left the job, went home on lunch, got her passport and brought it back to me. In the passport, it said this black woman was a Caucasian. And so the psychology of white supremacy that used dominance and terror and fear, psychological fear, spiritual fear, physical fear, and tyranny to make people become addicted to wanting to identify with them just to feel safe.
One way the white supremacists have been able to dominate and subjugate melanated people around the planet is by controlling the education, by controlling the knowledge, and controlling the knowledge of history. Because if you don't know yourself, you don't know how to empower yourself. If you don't know your history, you won't know your future. And the white supremacists have been very meticulous in erasing the history of African people and inserting themselves into that history.
The Greeks were the last race of people that the Egyptians passed the arcane knowledge on to. That's where Greek to me came from. They were the last ones that the Egyptians gave that to. It took 3 generations of Greeks under Egyptian rulership that they could finally find one that they could teach.
Egyptians call their land Kemet, and they use a piece of charcoal, a burnt piece of wood as charcoal, to symbolize what they mean. The blackest black. In all of their carvings of themselves, they paint their skins dark brown or black. They have white paint, red paint, yellow paint, but they paint themselves blacks. How anyone in the world, with so much information available for the public to see, can even be under any illusions that the Egyptian is even light-skinned?
Just when you look at climate and weather, if you go to Egypt, you will notice that the weather is quite hot. And you will notice that it is almost impossible to be able to be outside dressed the way the carvings on the walls are as it relates to the people. because you would get melanoma before we even knew melanoma existed. So they could not have been depigmented or less pigmented. They have to have been heavily pigmented.
So what we have then is various eyewitness descriptions where people visited Egypt and they left an account of the Egyptians in their texts. So what you have is people like Herodotus, who describes them as black-skinned and woolly-haired. Galen, who describes them as having short, black, dry, and brittle hair.
Not to mention, as Dr. Clark has taught us, where in the world did they do what they did in Africa? He used to say, are you telling me that Eurasians came out of Europe and built Africa up, but never went back to Europe to develop their civilizations the way they did in Africa? Or does it make sense that it was built up in Africa and it was sporadically brought across the globe to China and to Iraq and to Iran and into Europe, where you have the Stonehenge? Would that make better sense? So the answer is
yes, indeed. So caught up with social media that sometimes we can't believe that we can really exist without it. But 20 odd years ago, we were doing very much so. Anyway, we are playing another segment of Hidden Colors. This is the Cutting Edge on IRA FM. Roger Haspel here, Concrete Asphalt, it's CM1, holding the fort for Muta tonight. We're going until 2 o'clock. There are a number of segments in Hidden Colors, so we're just playing a few tonight. Or another time when we're about, we'll be playing some more. So we'll play the last segment tonight of Hidden Colors here on the Cutting Edge. And of course, we're going to open the lines so we can have a reason here and a reason there. So your time is coming up as well. So we'll play another segment of the Hidden Colors, one of the great black documentaries.
There is no question at this point.
Many of the artifacts that are on display in many of the Egyptian collections around the world are fakes.
The Nefertiti statue is of doubtful authenticity. That's a posh way of saying it's almost certainly a fake. A number of scholars have come out quite recently. Henri Sterling in Switzerland, he's come out and said, listen, this is a 100-year forgery.
If there is hundreds of paintings of Nefertiti and all of them are black, all of the statues in the Cairo Museum of Nefertiti is black, only this one little white statue in Germany is white. Something's wrong with that picture.
Marx was instructed to use the face of Ludwig's wife, Emily Brochard. So the face that supposedly was the most beautiful face of ancient history is actually the features of Ludwig Brochard's wife, Emily Brochard. So now, that's not even the half of it. Beautiful statue. Came out of the ground. No, it didn't come out of the ground. What happened was Brochard, was forced to bring it forward after 11 years. So what did he do? He took the head that Marx made, went back to the Tel Al-Amar site, covered it up with dirt, and came out and had a photo op as if that's how he found it.
One common lie and misconception that many white supremacists like to promote is that the African people didn't invent the wheel. That African people were just primitive, living in West Africa, waiting on the white supremacists to come save them. But in Africa, especially in the area that we now know as southern Libya, right in the Saharan desert, there were rock paintings of black Africans on chariots, and you can see the wheel, and these paintings go back 7,000 years.
In 951 AD, there was a scholar called Ibn Hawqal, and he wrote a book. And in his book, he describes two things. The first is visiting a fringe city of ancient Ghana called Aldagast. And he witnessed a merchant writing another merchant a check for 42,000 golden dinars. Now that should blow people's heads clean off. West Africa had checks 951 AD. The second thing he describes is that the emperor of Ghana was the richest king on the face of the earth.
There is a city known as Eredo, E-R-E-D-O, that's located in Nigeria, that the brilliant scholar Robin Walker is coming out with information dealing with the idea that this in Nigeria is a city that is 400 square miles in elliptical shape, and the ramparts or the gates are 70 feet high, or what might be considered to be maybe a 7-story building. That's how big it is. And that was done somewhere in the 800s to 1000 AD. At the same time, 400 years later, in the 1400s and the 1500s, where folk are saying these people are primitive, this city exists in Nigeria.
Once Britain burned the palace and they colonized the region and then renamed it Nigeria, it wasn't called that before, they did not permit the Oba, that's the emperor of Benin, to rebuild the palace. So consequently, what's there now is the tiny fraction that escaped being burned down.
We look at cities that were larger than cities in Europe at that time. We look at cities that had the equivalent of ancient skyscrapers, buildings that were 4 or 5 stories tall. We look at cities with streets. We look at cities with sewer systems. We look at cities, nations that had universities, that had libraries, that had a upper class, a solid middle class, architects, engineers, physicians, dentists, a city that would rival any other city in the world at that time.
Well, the emperor of Ghana, we know, lived in a castle with glass windows. We know this because there's an 1153 AD document that tells us that there were glass windows.
We've got Kano in parts of Nigeria. We've got the great Chad Basin civilizations. We got civilizations along the Congo that we don't even talk about. And what's ironic, in the 1700s, and you can actually go online and find some of them, the Europeans who go to the Congo come back home and draw pictures, which is in their museums, of these magnificent metropolis, these cities with streets laid out in grids and paved. They found the same thing in Benin. They found the same thing in Kumasi. But these same Europeans, especially the British and the French, will burn and sack most of these cities.
A Polish scholar called Z.R. Dmytrowski did a survey of Nigerian ancient monuments and wrote 3-volume architectural book called An Introduction to Traditional Nigerian Architecture, Volume 1, Volume 2, Volume 3. Now, that's important, you see, because most people wouldn't have thought that Nigeria had anything to be able to fill 3 volumes. Which brings me on to Benin. Benin is in the southern part of Nigeria. Now, Benin's architecture was very famous in medieval times. In particular, its royal palace. Its royal palace was the same size as whole European cities. Just a palace.
Ethiopia was one of the earliest countries to embrace Christianity, right? And so what you have in Ethiopia is a ancient civilization. You know, Ethiopia, we got to remember, Ethiopia is the source of the Blue Nile, right? And based on research that I'm looking at now, I'm really beginning to realize that Kemet is Ethiopia's oldest daughter. So the knowledge that flowered in Kemet began first in Ethiopia.
They never occupied and dominated and conquered Ethiopia totally. And that's because King Menelik understood he needed more than just spirituality, because a lot of the Africans in other parts of Africa, they depended on their spiritual system. But when you're dealing with a group of people like the white supremacists who were not spiritual at all, you're going to lose. So King Menelik, he used his spirituality, but he understood that he had to be practical. So King Menelik, he got guns that rivaled the guns of his enemies. And when the Italians came into Ethiopia to try to defeat him, King Menelik used his guns and used his weaponry to fight them off.
What Ethiopia was able to achieve was nothing short of military genius. They struggled certainly with Italy for maintaining gaining their independence. But I think what they were able to do was to use the land to their advantage. They were able to strategize, and they really outthought the enemy. And they were underestimated, let's face it. I think they were their military power was underestimated.
And so when you had all of this in the psyche of a people, this notion of empire and kingdoms and defending ourselves against the Greek army, the Roman army, the Turkish army, the Persian armies, what's some little rinky-dink Italians? We can handle this, and they handled it.
And when King Menelik in Ethiopia defeated the Italians, what's interesting, the Western media started to portray King Menelik as a white man. So this man was clearly a black African brother. There was pictures of him in the whole nine, but the Western media started to show cartoons and images of him as being white because they didn't want to let the world see that the European had been defeated by this African man.
Traditional African religions, particularly the one from ancient Egypt and Sudan, venerated this idea called Ma'at. And Ma'at, roughly speaking, you could translate it as truth, as justice, as righteousness, as reciprocity. The problem is when you're being attacked by people who don't believe any of that, and you are trying to do the Ma'atic thing, they will beat you, unfortunately. And this is one of those harsh lessons that the black community is still to learn.
The assumption that another group's view of humanity is the same as ours. The assumption that another group's understanding of divinity is the same as ours. The African moved from the premise that everybody was a brother, and thus should be treated and accorded that kind of brothership and brotherhood. The European moved from a position that what is mine, and what is yours is mine if I can take it. You had a war culture coming in contact with an agrarian culture. The war culture is always going to win because the war culture doesn't put any value on human life. And that means it has no barometer to how much death and destruction it will carry out.
People talk about the greatness of Africa, and we see some of the great empires that we had over in Africa. And naturally, a lot of people will say, okay, if we had all these great empires, where did Africa go wrong? There's several situations that happened. One thing that happened with Africa, you had Mansa Musa. Now, Mansa Musa, according to most historians, a West African black man who was a king in the area that we know as Mali and Timbuktu, the wealthiest man to ever live. And Mansa Musa's situation was a gift and a curse because Mansa Musa, he went around the world basically just giving out gold. This man had so much money, he could give money away. And he gave so much money out, it decimated certain economies in other nations. So it showed the humanity of the African people and the generosity of the African people, but you showed people that you had all of this wealth, so now people are plotting on you. So when people saw Mansa Musa giving out all that money, he became lunch to everybody else. So Africa started to get raided and flooded with all types of people trying to take advantage of the wealth and the resources that were in Africa.
The tide rises and falls. I mean, what are we talking about? We're not supposed to be a victim of time. When you're going into Africa, you're going into Africa when it was falling, when it was old and worn out, trying to nurture and educate the East Indians, the Chinese, and the Europeans, trying to help all of these people to raise them up to a higher level, and they wore us out. Even today, you'll get worn out if you talk to a certified Negro under warranty. They will wear you out.
We didn't take military matters seriously. We didn't take warfare seriously. And I'm aware that the propaganda where the West presents such as the Zulus as a highly militaristic nation, unfortunately we needed a lot more Zulus and a lot more people on that militaristic thing because historically that's where we were weak.
I don't know why Nubia failed. Besides, all nations fall. Rome fell, Greece fell, the current empires you're in are going to fall, and superpowers are going to come. So yeah, we failed. Kings died. Other people mishandled money. The same thing that happened with your grandmama inheritance after she died. The same thing. Some of your cousins went and wilded out with it. The other of your cousins took it and created their own little things. The same thing happened, but the question is, how do we create in Israel? How do we create in India? How do we create a Germany? How do we create something for us? Because we need something, you know. Dr. John Henry Clark was like, we're yelling that we want a nation, and it's nation time, and we don't even know how to build a train. The Japanese bought one train, reverse engineered that train, now they selling trains. Any nation fails is you don't want it to fall again. So ultimately, if I wanted to find out why any black nation failed, I would go to the most recent one, because the most recent one works by our recent standards of governing and governance, and that would be Haiti. Why did Haiti fail? Haiti was sabotaged by France. Haiti was looted, and she was sanctioned globally.
Haiti offered any blacks anywhere in the hemisphere, from the Dominican Republic, the United States, if you can escape from slavery and get here, you're a free man, and we protect the integrity of your freedoms. That is what the anger against Haiti was about. Haiti was the first free republic that offered freedom to any enslaved people, black or white, from anywhere. If you make it to these lands, our army will protect your integrity.
For 444 years of the European enslavement of African people, you had the best and the brightest of African people steadily taken out. And then after that genocide, after that Holocaust, Europeans decided that they were going to go in now after the Berlin Conference and control the land for another 88 years. So Africa has only been free for less than 50 years, but it's still suffering from the ravages of 444 years of slavery, 88 years of colonization. You don't recover from that automatically unless there are plans in place to aid your recovery. After Europe was destroyed during World War I and World War II, you had the Marshall Plan and other plans that were implemented by the United States in order to rebuild Europe. Look at photographs of London, photographs of Paris after the war, after the bombing, and then see what American aid did 20 years later to rebuild those cities. So we think that Europe has always looked like that. No, Europe has had more wars than Africa has had, but they've had access to resources to rebuild. Africa hasn't had the ability to rebuild.
There was no revolution there. There was no independence granted. All they were done was to make a few Negroes wealthy, and then y'all managed the apartheid poverty for us. But we'll keep all of our banks. We'll keep all of our mines. We'll keep all of our industry. We're not sharing nothing with you. We'll keep the best 80% of the farmland, and you can't even come into our little towns. There are towns in South Africa we don't know the names of. That's the most prosperous, most beautiful places in the world. White folks are retiring from Europe every day, especially the aristocrats going there to live, and they make us think South Africa is Johannesburg.
Colonial powers of Europe left African nations. They took everything, even the light bulbs. They ripped up the train tracks. They said, if we're leaving, we're going to make sure that you won't be able to sustain yourself. And they destroyed everything. It's no different than what happened in America after emancipation.
When they left, they destroyed all. Guinea is one of the classic cases. They even took the toilet paper. They took everything out of Guinea. And then, from the international marketplace, fought to keep Guinea from ever developing international trade with Europe. Guinea has the largest supply of iron ore in the world. Who do you think control and own it? Some Israeli mega capitalists.
0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and so on. Those numbers that we have are, people call them Arabic numerals. They're not Arabic, they're Hindu. But the mathematicians that introduced them to Europe were in fact African mathematicians. The fraction bar, where you've got 2 fraction 7 and the fraction bar, that was something that was invented by an African mathematician. Some of the most advanced math textbooks during the period were again written by Moorish mathematicians. Where it comes to the areas of astronomy, where it comes to areas such as navigation, map making, and so on. So there was a Moorish geographer called El Idrisi, and he was the one that said in his book that the world is as round as a sphere, and the waters are held to it by what he calls natural equilibrium. You can work out what he really means, gravity. And he says that the world is divided into 360 degrees. Now this was 1153. And then that gives you some idea of what kind of intellects we're talking about.
Guinea was the French word, the European word for West Africa. So in all of Africa, some point was called Guinea. And so when they get in the Pacific, they see all the black folks, so they say, okay, this is the New Guinea. That's why it's called New Guinea. You got New Caledonia. You got Vanuatu. You had Australia. These are all African populations. Easter Island is off of the coast of South America going into the Pacifics. And all of the statues there are statues of African images.
The statues in Easter Island, they look identical to ancient face masks that's from West Africa. Also in Easter Island, there's an ancient script called Rongo Rongo, and this writing looks identical to African hieroglyphics. Also, there's an East African tribe called the Rongo tribe. Also, there's another very remote Pacific island called Nukuhiva. Now, this place is in the middle of nowhere, but there are statues on this island that look identical to ancient statues that are in Nigeria. So we definitely have evidence of an African presence in some of the most remote places around the globe.
Yeah, man, so what a documentary a short while ago, man. There's so much more out of that documentary, you know, but we can't play all night tonight. So we hope that, you know, some of the facts that were presented were well absorbed. Shows you how disadvantaged we are in terms of what was the disadvantage that was taken on us. All we have to do now, we just have to stand on the shoulders of those who paved the way. And we set the trend for those to come. Because we need to recreate that empire upon which the sun shall never set. So we're feeling we're going to take your calls. You know, we're taking your calls anytime now. Of course, you know, we're going until 2 o'clock. Yeah, man, yell up to the original Rastaman them, you know. The real teacher them. Yeah, man them from way back when, man. Yes, I. Respect. Yeah, man, we have some great Rastaman, you know. Yes, man. Some of them still amongst our way. And them that will pass and gone, man. I tell you, man, lay the foundation, man. A little movement that gave birth in Jamaica, which no doubt will be the dominant movement, I'm certain, within another century and two. It's a very dominant movement as we speak, but we don't know so it's gonna take off. Rastafari. Blessed to the original Rastaman then. Man who bear the brunt, the struggle. Yeah, man, so as we say, you know, we open the lines now, you know, so we can reason. We have until 2 o'clock, so the lines them free up. So we know all of the conscious ones them out there. First come, first serve. You don't know the thing, go. So we're there, ready to take your call. Saying, Cutting Edge, IRA FM. Come on. Greetings. Yeah, man. What's up?
IRA FM, you know?
Yeah, man. You have to talk about a little louder here.
Yeah, more life, you know?
Saying, respect.
Yeah. More life, man.
Yeah, man. More life, I said too.
Yeah. People have to know the thing, you know?
True, man.
Yeah. Black rule, you know?
Yeah, man. Black power.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. We have to perpetuate that, Rasta.
Until the philosophy, you know, which was
yeah, man, but you know, you sound very low, though. I try to do everything to make you come up, but boy, I don't know. You can't talk a little louder?
Yeah, man.
Yeah, man. Are you that now, man?
Yeah. That's until the philosophy which was on the superior unto another. Yeah, man, I hate that, man.
Yes, man, until the philosophy that whole and race superior
and to another, you know.
Yeah, man, there'll be war, man.
It won't trend, you know.
Yeah.
So anytime all heads of government follow that speech and rule of His Imperial Majesty, yeah, the world, the people in the world see the unity.
Yeah, man.
The world, you know, the people them.
True.
Cause everything alright with the world.
Yeah, man, nothing wrong with the world. It's the people them that is in it.
Alright. Yeah, man, I'm more life, man.
Yes, man.
I love the eye energy.
Saying?
And the eye strength where the eye keep up, you know.
Respect.
Follow Muta footstep, you know.
Yeah, man, Muta set it, so we have to just go and maintain it.
Marcus footsteps same way, His Majesty footsteps same way.
Exactly.
Mama Miga, you know.
Yeah, man, standing on the shoulders of the greats.
Yeah, man.
Yes.
Out of Lindsay, you know.
Yeah, man, Lindsay, that's my place, you know, man.
Alright.
Which part of Lindsay? Which part of Lindsay?
Railway ends, you know.
Eh?
On the railway ends.
Oh, railway ends. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Cool.
I'm more life and strength, yeah?
Yeah, man. Same to the eye, man. Respect. Heal up everyone down that side there. Lindsay does it. Yeah, bless.
More life.
Yeah, bless. Bless. See it. Heal.
Yes, sir.
What's up?
I mean, I say, bless up the eye first and foremost, you know.
Yes, man. Bless up to the eye, too, man.
Bless up the word.
Yes, man.
You know?
Yes, man. See it.
I love the words, you know, because IFM is a radio station, I've been saying, like a university.
Yes, man. The institution of the people, man.
Yeah, man. So, you know what I say? I just a shout out a happy Mother's Day to all the mothers, you know. You see it,
yeah, man.
Every day a Mother's Day to you, know.
True.
You know what I say? Officially, I just want like 30 seconds to just touch something to mama, a little poem, you know?
Okay.
Yeah, man. Saying, say, my mama, you see it? And now when I say, my mama. Oh, how I love my mama. My mama. I love you, mama. Mama, you read my mind when I couldn't talk. And you lifted me up when I couldn't walk. Mama, you're a genius because you knew when I was hungry. And you held me so close when I was lonely. Mama, you are always there through thick and thin. And though we were poor, we didn't eat from a bin. My mama taught me right, not wrong. And even when Dad was gone, she still held strong. My mama also taught me to give thanks when I wake, and also to do so when it's late. I could go on forever about my mama. Oh, how I love my mama. Yes, I.
Yes, man.
Yeah, man.
Great, man.
You know?
Great, man. Great piece of works.
Yeah, man. For real, man. Give thanks, you know?
Yeah.
Love the energy, man.
Respect.
I call out Westmoreland.
Westmoreland, which part from West?
Yeah, man. Kings Valley, Grangeville, you know?
Grangeville.
Yeah.
Down the side there. Respect. Big up everybody down the side. On the lot down the side there?
Always, man.
Or just one and two people listen?
I don't carry a show coming out of town, man. That's it.
Or just one and two people listen or a whole heap of people listen down there, so?
Yeah, man. Myself bring a show in town and then we know how go on.
Alright. So, how a place then?
A phone place, man.
Alright, sir. And you never switch?
Nah, switch, man.
Alright.
Yeah, can't switch. Really stuck for IFM.
Yeah, man. Alright, bless. Yeah, man, bless. Grangeville, man. Grangeville. Respect. Yeah, man, the great Mikey Smith, man. One of the original perpetuators of this thing they call dub poetry. Yeah. Man who was stoned to death on Marcus Garvey birthday, 1981, in Stony Hill, close to a political rally. Yeah, man, the man was always against the system of the day. And somehow he got himself up in a political meeting, or close to a political meeting, fire burning the system as usual, and he was stoned to death. Mikey Smith, man. Yeah. There's so much wicked things that has happened in this island, you know. And one of them, of course, I think, well, maybe further down in this week will be the commemoration of the Evening Tide Home Fire. I don't know if many of you know about the Evening Tide Home Fire. Happened in 1980, just in the election time. They one of the wickedest time in Jamaica. Although, what is happening now in terms of the amount of people who are dead, and them time they did enough, but boy, I tell you now, but certain things remain the same here in Jamaica. Political tribalism. And Evening Tide Home was one of those victims. Evening Tide Home was a home, one of them nursing homes for old people. I know it because I usually go around here. My grandmother usually take me around here because my grandmother was a caregiver around an evening tide home, just at the top of Slipe Road. Yeah, man. When you go up Sliping Road on the bottom of Beachwood Avenue. Them call it Studio One Boulevard now. So right in that little corner there, where you go around and you go around that little corner there, big house. That house, well, it burned down now, but that house was one of the where British soldiers usually stay in the 18th centuries and so on. And over time it became hospice for old people. Old and, people who can't help themselves again. And it was burned down. 165, 140 odd people, to be precise, were burned to death. Old people burned to death. One of the wickedest times in Jamaica. I remember it clearly when I was a little youth. Yeah, man. And it's now almost 40 years. But I will never ever forget it. That always stand out in my memory. And there's a mass grave at the bottom of Hero Circle before you reach the just after you pass the Total gas station and go around before you reach the other, beside senior school, a big long mass grave. They were buried there, and it's now a monument. And we just tell you some wicked things happen in Jamaica, and sometimes some of the things that we are reaching in Jamaica are because of the wicked things them that we do. See? And boy, something happening in this country. So here are some songs of the day that really pay tribute to the Evening Tide Home Fire. Yeah, man, Yellow Man singing about Evening Tide Home, man. 1980, man. Never forget it. May 20, soon commemoration. Greetings, good night. Or good morning. Any one of them. Midnight, no. Greetings.
Yes, good night.
Hi, what's up?
I'm here. Just listening, calling in to share a few of my thoughts.
Yes.
I'm thinking about things happening, talking about things that happen in this country.
Yes.
And I've been saying from the other day that I have never seen things happening by themselves. It's always somebody doing something.
True.
Whatever is in the individual's mind is what the individual will be able to do. And we know that is our thoughts, fuel our actions. Science support that.
Right, in terms of them premeditation.
Right, so up to now, I never see one gun or one knife walk up one stairs and go kill somebody.
True. Never see that yet.
So I was thinking of saying it from the other day. So even with quarrels and so, we never see one quarrel by itself.
No, true.
And even with the children where I get cut off in our country, we never see one rape one child.
True.
Or so
yeah, man, it has to be the human element and the mind, the thought of the individual that perpetuate the action.
Right. And a lot of things when we say happen, things are passed down through generations.
Yes.
The home, which is the first unit in a society, if the things were trained, where the children get from in the home, no right, and even people, because children become adults when they go to a society, at the same homes, everybody come from and make up the society, every organization. Right.
And also, the negative cultures that we import into our society.
Yeah.
It will play a great role in messing up our minds, our people, especially with young people.
And the other side of it too, I realize we have a disconnect in transferring our imaginations into reality, actual things, because
good things.
Yeah, man. I mean the good things.
Right. Yeah.
So a lot of us we talk, and we have some good meditation, and good thinking, but we translate it transfer it to actual things.
In a realistic.
Yes. Yeah. In an invention and them something there. Why is it we have so much bright thinkers in this country, and yet still when it comes on to production and something that we have to import everything, we have to depend on other people to do, and we there have the resources in terms of human resources, and we have resources in other thing, material and so.
That's what the system said. The system said that way. The system said that way, and then we'll buy into it, and we can't get out of it.
But as I say, we, and maybe I say we too. If each individual could have say, well, my sister, I can do this and so, and just step towards that, because to wait and somebody else to empower you or the other person, it may never happen, because the greatest prison we can in our mind, and we are walk in our imagination.
True.
And I would walk, as Marcus Garvey said, when I walk on just something there. Feet alone. Walk on with brain, upon mind.
Walk on our mind, man. Yeah.
So maybe that just sometimes we listen to the people around us. We are here just pure negative, and something like catch on easy.
Yeah, man, it contagious. Contagious. And then it just become a sore.
Yeah, put it to some positive thing, and we have people with brilliant ideas. You know, if we could have found like minds for join together.
Yeah, man.
Because it cycle need to break. So
there's no doubt that we have great mind and great thinkers. It's just how we're gonna get it out for the benefit of society.
Right.
Because right now, just the negative, just the negative being perpetuated and the negative being pushed, and it have a devastating impact on society. We're society on the brink of collapse, based off of the things that is happening, the killing of our children, the crime, the corruption. It's like the more things change, the more they remain the same.
But the change has to start with one person. If each
have to
see within themselves and just start
It have to. All we have to look into the mirror, because if we don't look in the mirror ourselves, it have to start with ourselves. But how much people know, how much people will reach that stage where they're going to know, they're going to start to know themselves. Because that's the problem, we don't know ourselves.
Right. I think resocialization through even education, because even though education is not to be formal, but people must be taught and helped to see, is a wrong course. With the pan, and somebody needs to help somebody in your own corner where you can, because it's terrible when you look on a little baby and you can't think for hurt the baby there.
Hurt it.
Tell them something wrong with the thinking.
If you see a little baby start crying, man, the way I feel it, man. Any baby at all. The way I feel, when I just start to then cry, if you ask something, a simple thing, I just can't understand how a big human being, big man, or a big woman can just so evil for just look at earth a pitney deliberately to the point where them all kill them.
But as we say, you can only rise as high as your mind. You can't rise higher than your mind. You are your mind.
Yeah.
Your mind is you. But if your thoughts get lifted, your mind go higher, you will go rise.
Yeah, man. You have to elevate. You have to elevate if you're interested into elevating your thoughts.
Yes. So, even though it's sad, and those who know will just go and push. And try to help somebody else to change the course.
Yes.
Change the course.
Yes. All right. Give thanks. Where you calling from?
St. Thomas.
Which part of St. Thomas?
Up a Marin Point.
All right. We out of the point. The first part of Jamaica, the first point.
Yeah, man. At the east. And as me like point out, from the west of Africa to where me there, one straight eastward from when we leave Marin Point. And you travel east.
You can't just travel in a one straight line.
Straight to West Africa,
straight in West Africa from Marin Point. One straight line.
Yeah, east. Where
see
that? Them come from.
Yeah, see that? Yeah, man. Respect, man. You first to the sun of man in time. Yes. All right. Give thanks. Bless up everybody out there.
Yeah, man.
All right. Give thanks. Yeah, man. So I say, evening tide home. Evening tide fire. Well, I'm almost 39 years ago. When you remember, say 140 of the old people just burn up and dead, so. This was one of the greatest tragedies in Jamaica, you know. And sometimes, my feel a job beat with. Because of them things that were happen in our society. For real. Greetings. Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, man.
Good night, man.
Good night.
Yeah, man, we just call the St. Elizabeth, you know?
Which part of St. Elizabeth?
Santa Cruz, St. Elizabeth.
Ah, yeah, more this start the gun, you know.
Yeah, go and listen to your program, you know?
Yeah, more this start the gun, you know.
Yeah, man, you know, say big things I got did this Friday 17, you know, say Da Vinci and, you know, Guinness, something, you know?
Okay, yeah, cool.
Yeah, man. Big up my friend, the Rasta Devon, I go and listen to you, you know, we up on his park, I go and Bill and I go and listen to you,
Seeing.
Yeah, man. I mean, I say everything up, man. Love your program, you know?
Yeah, man. Respect.
All right, yeah, man. And big up Muta, too.
Yeah, man. Muta, forget him. Big up, man. Anyway, in there.
Yeah.
With him barefoot.
All right. Yeah, man. Man has a respect.
Yeah, man. The great Muta, man. Yeah. All right.
Yeah, man.
All right. Big up Santa Cruz.
All right, sir.
Yeah, man. The edge. Cutting edge. Greetings.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, man. You're live.
Good. There's a couple of observations from my perspective through this thing called life.
Yeah.
Growing up, I used to watch some movies. I can't remember when they used to have these movies about, particularly around the time when Black History Month, and they used to have these movies where you have the white man beating the black man.
Mm-hmm.
Or, treating them in some inhumane way.
Kunta Kintes and them kind of show that.
Yeah. And my reaction then was to be very emotional.
Mm-hmm.
And I used to say, boy, buck up under them man right now, we're going to deal with the wicked.
Yeah.
As I grow older, I realize that it is never wise to take an emotional approach in solving most of your problems.
Mm-hmm.
It is always best that you be very calm and be in control, because that's how you know exactly how you execute effectively.
Yeah, man.
So I would want to advise a lot of persons who would have that tendency, younger than myself, because I'm kind of, up in age in a way, don't get emotional. Make an intelligent assessment of the situation. In other words, make the best of that experience that you have. When you watch it, analyze it. Do a critical analysis of it from back to front. And when you do, then you make a response that will take you from just being emotional, and then that wears off, and a couple of days and you're back to normal.
You want to talk about any specific case?
You mean in terms?
Yeah, man. In your reasoning. Yeah, man. I mean, in your reasoning. I mean, like say, boy. So I cite an example.
Oh no! I wouldn't. No. I would
okay.
Just kind of just generalize.
Generalize. All right.
Yeah, man. I want to move on to something else.
All right. No problem.
And I go back. Well, let me see it in Jamaica for a while. The Eventide home fire. See?
Yes.
We. I don't know how we treat death. How we view death. In my personal experience, it is not a reality for me.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't really exist.
Mm-hmm.
But for those of us who have that inclination to believe that it is a reality for them and it is something that whatever, it should be treated with more reverence, because that incident happened, and I can make a comparison with the incident that took place in Tivoli. No, that one of the things that stand out in my, because I was pretty young during that time when they even.
Yeah, man, myself, I remember it. Yeah,
right. But the Tivoli incident was something that stand out in my mind, and I said to myself, 78 people dead.
Yeah. Well, that's what them say, but it's what we feel is more.
It was like nothing.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we just move on. I mean, there's no memory of them existing. It just, anytime you have a society that deal with things like that, you know why we are where we are now.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. When these things happen and these cruel things happen, and we not take a stock ourselves, then what we expect?
Exactly.
What we really expect?
No, and you know, man, the other thing is self-awareness. You can be the brightest doctor, the brightest scientist, and you don't really know yourself, because that is just one aspect of your life.
Exactly.
And some people we have a lot of way to educate people, especially in Jamaica, that once you're a doctor, then you're like you're self-aware, and then being a doctor is self-aware and you know yourself. Let us learn to separate the two.
True.
Right? Because we use education in Jamaica as some form of
to keep in
arrival.
Yeah,
we have
arrive and you keep in.
Thing.
Yeah.
You know, and that's not true. So if education was a mark of being arrival and self-aware, we'd be one of the most advanced people in the world.
Yeah.
Right? So let us not fool ourselves. I don't buy into this other education system because it doesn't teach the children about themselves.
No, this education system has failed us, you know. It has failed us.
Raj, it's me and you know, because I'm a radicalist. You know. I tell you straight up, you know, I'm a radicalist. Bin Laden is my hero.
Okay.
So, is it because we tell you something? You see, the longer you continue to accept something, you see, if you live in a community, and you see, man come in your community and start to behave over here, you say to yourself, well, I know my business, you know. I'm going to lock my door, man, because man, I'm going to be, sooner or later, they're coming for you, you know.
Yeah.
So you see, the sooner you see once them come and you realize that they're not up to nothing good, take a stand.
Nip it, nip it in the bud.
Take a stand.
God, that bud, they're going to grow, you know.
You are going to be the same one crying over your granddaughter, coughing sooner or later by those very same man who might come into the community and sow a seed. So I don't take prisoners, and I don't fear is not something that I wear at any time in my life. I don't wear fear because it's not sexy, it's not good, it's not healthy for me. So I'm going to take the bull by the horn. On an international scale, though, with what's going on, particularly with, say, Libya, I hear you touch on it about with what they did to Gaddafi.
Yeah.
You see, in my mind, even at this point, one of the things I tell myself, in order for you to conquer any situation, and most situations, especially the more complex it becomes, the more you need to educate yourself with the type of information that will help you to defeat it or accomplish your goal. Now, I believe in myself that the thing that has been done to Africa as a place and Africans as a people, I think there has to be some retribution. Because here's the thing for me. If you come to my land, rip me out, take away my identity, my religion, and everything, you know, everything that is self-sustaining as a human being, you take that away from me. Take me to a place where you give me a religion, you give me everything that you think I might need and whatever. And then I'm a lost soul, you know. I am lost. So in all fairness, tell me something. You really think we should make you get away with that? Hello?
Yeah.
No, I'm saying, no, I'm asking.
You're asking me? You're asking me?
Yeah. You really think we should make you get away with something like that, man?
With what took place? You can't.
Yeah.
No, you can't. I mean, if it's even the generations to come.
No, but you can't get it.
That's why this reparation thing is a serious thing, you know. Not a people is not a joke thing, you know.
No, but you see,
and it must have happened, you know. It must have happened.
No, well, I back you 100%, but I'll take it a little further. You see, Jamaica, this land, this place was bought and paid for with blood.
Yes.
And I would advise, you see, I see a lot of things happening with the land and people selling out. I would advise, and I'm as I say, I'm a radical. I really don't play around. selling out the land and people, throwing up land and all that sort of thing. When they take up a man and dash him out and sleep, we never get anything from slavery. The slave master get what they want and we get kicked off of the land like a old animal.
That's why we are where we are now.
Exactly. So hold on, these people in authority seriously expect that every generation is going to come and allow them to do the same thing. Control the land, sell it to whatever they want to sell it to. I said the beasts are taking up. I said, let me go on by saying this one. Be very, very careful. People in authority, this land was bought and paid for with blood. It wasn't free. We as black people living here didn't get this thing free. People came in, those who get the most benefit of it, benefit twice. And I think of a case, think of Haiti, for example. Right, with twice, with everything that we got, we pay for it with our blood. It doesn't get any better than that. It doesn't get any worse. So here's my advice to people in authority. Be very, very careful. Very, very careful. Because don't expect every generation is going to go by and allow this just to go, because some of us really and truly value the next generation. We value our grandkids, we value our children, and we want to see them have a different perspective and a different future than we have, and a different experience here than we had.
Has to be a better one.
Right? So, taking responsibility, but moving it from just talk. Right? Because this is serious.
Yeah, and procrastination have to put aside.
Procrastination, man. Listen to me, man. I tell you that. Whether Bin Laden make up the thing for America or it wasn't, he's my hero. You take care of yourself.
I hear you. All right, I hear you, sir. All right, this is the Cutting Edge on IRE FM. Yeah, man. So, mind upon evening tide home, night, for real. Yeah, man. Yellow man, singing about evening tide, man. Cutting Edge, greetings.
Yeah, greetings, brother.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, just listening to the program and thing.
Yeah.
Calling all the way from Canada. Yeah, calling all the way from Canada.
Canada? Which part in Canada? Where in Canada?
Toronto, me demo.
Toronto. Up the cool now?
You know, say weather kind of cool off a weird, so we go through a cold period already. So
all right.
Right now, so
all right, sir. All right.
16 degrees also.
Hey. Okay. Yes, man.
Yeah, man. So for real, so me just go so man and listen to the program.
Same.
Me cause me just buck up on it, and it's a kingdom new. So me I say, what? Them thing where they are Jamaica now, and me I say, yo, it's a good look, because it is very important for people to know them true history.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And not a fabricated history, because even when I was in Jamaica and I was in school, and how they teach history, like for example, I thought my history started with slavery.
Exactly. So yeah.
And I when I isolate myself and start read and make some deeper things, and understand and research place and learn about place like Kemet and Push. And these Asian places.
Yeah, man.
You know what I mean? I learn about Asian civilization and great people. Because even when we grew up in school, because I used to be even on school challenge quiz, and when we used to study, and we talk about the father of medicine.
Yes.
And they say the father of medicine is Hippocrates.
Yeah, Hippocrates.
And start studying Asian. I learn about a man they call Imhotep.
Yes, I mean? The first ambidextrous.
The first architect.
Yeah, man.
The one who built the step Mercury in Saqqara. You know what I mean? The first grandlad, the first multi-genius.
The man who was so brilliant. The man who was so brilliant that he could write with both hands at the same time in different languages.
That's it. That's how Imhotep was.
Yeah.
You learn about Imhotep, Pressure Shed. All of these great people, but back when we be at school and we have study, we now learn about these people.
No, man, they not teach them something.
We learn more. You know what I mean? Like
Marco Polo and Christopher Columbus and Pythagoras.
Christopher Columbus and all of these things. And you see him Christopher Columbus thing, to find out even the navigation of Christopher Columbus were Moors. These were the people who were coming from in North Africa. And
Long time.
Africa.
Long time.
Who came into Spain. You see what I mean? And start Spain, because a lot of people don't even know when they talk about Spain. Like Salamanca. These Moors who came into places like Spain and set up these universities and teach these people and show these people how to do many things. So, you know, when we hear a program like these, we really have to understand that there is something out there bring the history to people where people can open up them eyes. Because when Marcus Garvey was teaching Pan-Africanism, every time I look, one of my favorite saying of Marcus Mosiah Garvey, when you see people without the knowledge of their past history and origin and culture.
It's like a tree without roots.
And it's true, because we don't have any standing. You know what I mean? More time we're looking at ourselves, and even up here, when you're up here, and sometimes you see Jamaicans and things, and you say, you try to teach them certain things, and I try to job at them roots, and I say, yo, Africa, the thing set, you know. You see me, enough of them and say, yo, we're not Africa.
No, man, them not have no time for Africa, man. Think about Africa.
You see me, them not have no time for that. And then vice versa. You look for the same continental Africa, them Africans, them were coming from Africa. And you say you're Jamaican and you're African, and they say, we didn't know that. So, if you look, so you know, it says an educational thing. So the educational system is failing up. Because certain critical things, certain knowledge of the know, self-knowledge of the group and know certain things and can identify ourselves. Because back then we are looking at all these things and everybody face what we are see. Everybody face what we see on our face. But when you can look and know, say, the world's greatest civilization started with you, that proves something for you. If it's even a self-esteem, you know what I mean, that put it to a certain level. So, it's really good to know that these things are out there, because the youth have to learn and, you know what I mean, hold up them head. Ladies, the same thing, because in ancient Africa and ancient civilization, woman was the key cornerstone to the civilization. You know what I mean? Women were held in high regard.
Matriarch.
We need to get back to that thing there. Yeah, matriarch system. So we need to get back to that system there, because when you go to woman, take on an ancient chemist. You hear them talk about the primordial waters of Nun. You know what I mean? Nut. All these feminine principles, which were basically energy, and these feminine principles and the masculine qualities coming out of them. The women were very important. As a matter of fact, they were the first teachers. You see me? So we need to respect the woman, them, and vice versa. The woman, we need to respect her, because both are equal. As in African society, that's how they do it in ancient Africa. You know what I mean? Even when you look at some architecture, and you see man and woman, many times in that real time, the men or the woman was probably shorter, but when you see they did the architecture, you see them on the same level. They were trying to depict something to who had the eyes to see that both women and men were needed. It's a balanced system, and that balanced system in ancient Africa, they call it ma'at. You see, the balance. But these science are really deep, because take it out, when you're doing a mathematics, you're trying to balance the equation. That's what you're trying to do, you're trying to balance, so we need to create a balance. You see me? So, you know what I mean? When we hear things like this, trust me, it make you know, say, you know what? Changes are coming up. It may be slow, but changes are coming. And we have to try to be the catalyst, we have to drive this reaction. So, we're really happy to hear that. And you man, go on do your thing, more life and strength, and big up Mutabaruka. You know what I mean? Because everybody know him over here. You know what I mean? So, yo man, just go and do nothing and enough respect.
Yes,
you know what I mean? Because a lot of people eyes and heart now open up. And the second thing too, we as people, next thing, we as black people in general, not only Jamaican, we need to stop running away from things. We are free. When we're in Jamaica, where you go to Obama, you see a black cat, you see a bad luck. You come up here and you have a bad economical depression, a black market. You buy something illegal, is a black market. The Black Friday is black, this is black that. We need to come out of these concepts. These concepts These things are mental, it's a mental psychology.
Yeah, man, it's a thing we're designed for. It's designed. Yeah, it is designed to make you just stay away.
Look for ice white. And when you just about and slip on the ice, you know, see what they call it up there, they call it black ice. Or ice turn black. So it's just a psychological program we as people need to get out.
Yeah, man, the program, man. We're program, so we have to deprogram.
We deprogram ourselves.
Yeah.
And program ourselves in the right way because we are running away from.
Yeah, we are deprogrammed individually. We are deprogrammed individually. But we're not so strong for the collective.
No. Collective is very.
That's why we are suffer so.
About collective. That's the thing. They talk about collective. That's.
You gone? Okay, I can run out of credit. Good reasoning still. Brethren from Canada. Yeah, man, the cutting edge here on Area FM, we still take your calls, Greetings, good night. Hello? Hello?
Hello?
Yeah, man, you're live,
Thank you very much, Brian. This is Mr. X.
Mr. X.
Pan-Africanist Marcus Garveyites.
Say.
Can I have a request, please?
Go ahead, no?
Yeah. A song named Save the Children by Judd Dave and Friends.
Okay.
Besides that, I would like to say a few things. One of the most interesting programs we have in the world, Cutting Edge.
Exactly. That me set up.
Knowledgeable, and I've been listening to you for a good while now, and I'm running Africa. I would like to meet you one day, but I will have to arrange that.
Yeah, man.
Our biggest challenge in the world today for black people is a lack of proper education. And until we set the curriculum for everybody, yeah, and we're going to educate all our people to the highest level, it's not your money going to take you to your university or ability. And we're going to set the trend for the world. We want to think about building university colleges, schools, yeah? And we can do it, and we're going to do it. Marcus have set the black print. Make a look at it, yeah? We are saying every man God sees, every man should have a job. The name of our group is OURS, OURS, Our United Resource Service. Mm-hmm. We say our people being united, or it's our resource. What is resource? Your brain power. Develop the brain to the highest level and a service back to our people. One quote Malcolm X says, it's only fools allow the children to be educated by the enemy. We all do because we say we can't do foolishness because that's what they teach us. Everybody want to go heaven, but nobody want to die. How far away this great places? We could live, man. We could live for life, we could create what it is. And we can, so we got to change a few things. It's good to know that people like you have the vision. You didn't pick it up. You was created for it. And the children who are going to teach them what it is. Simple. Loving, caring, and sharing. When we say black power, you always say we're going to rule our destiny. Bojo, call him hero or whatsoever it is, What is your destiny? We are going to rule our destiny. And I'm going to say, we're going to sign off with action. Every year we're going to what are we celebrating? This brother talk about Tivoli Garden. We want a monument out there. These guys were sacrificed because they wasn't educated. Some educated man used to go down there to do that. We have a ballot system, and we're going to go through the ballot system, and we're going to educate our people. This brother Williams, he said going to university to lecture. I don't know if you know him. But you know him, said him not take no money. He's going to put that because we cannot pay for what the ancestors have done for us. But our heroes, our children coming forward, come on, man. We are the best in the world. And I'm not going to touch the sports thing right now, but we say big up the regular girl.
Yes.
We talk about women. You say, how we treat a woman? We mother. The greatest creature on planet Earth, look what they do with Eve. They lie upon the poor woman. Now we are treating a woman. Now we are not educated enough to accept what the woman is more powerful than the men. They can have children, we can't. Come on, man. So, Brian, one day we're going to meet, and thanks for the time,
Yeah, man.
Yeah?
Yeah, man, respect.
Number?
Yeah, man.
Yeah, my number is 3.
Come on, just call. Leave it to the operator. Leave it to the operator. Call back. Our assistant, broadcast assistant, and she'll.
Good, thank you. But the part of it is 347-1015. Thanks very much.
Yeah, man.
I want you to go sit down, and have a good chat.
I agree. Bless.
Yeah, let's hope you can find the record, save the children.
I don't think I can find it tonight, but I will try for the next week.
Great, man.
Yeah.
How long you going to be on the program for?
Maybe 2 weeks.
That is great.
Maybe,
man,
maybe, yeah.
Well, we just work with it. Thanks again, my brother.
All right, bless.
African love, man. Black
power. Man. Black power.
Good.
Yeah.
All right.
The SAR, man. The SAR never fail, The SAR never fail. The cutting edge. Greetings.
Greetings, man. How are you?
Yeah, man. You have to talk a little louder here.
Yeah. Can you hear me better now?
Hope you can maintain like this.
Yeah. Okay, sorry about that. The phone and that, but anyway. Hey, Roger, how you doing, man?
All right, not too bad.
Good, man. I'm enjoying the program, man. I'm listening to all your callers here, man, and a lot of them are talking about Kenneth, and...
Well, I struggle for area, to be honest. I struggle for area.
Let me see if I can get to a higher place.
Yeah.
So I'm in the mountains, yeah? So
where are you?
In the mountains.
Where?
Can you hear me better?
Where are you?
In the mountains.
Baltics? Where's the Baltics?
No, man, no.
Where it says?
I'm in the office, can you hear me?
In your office?
I'm in the mountains.
Mountains?
Yeah, man.
Where?
I'm in California.
Okay. All right, go on. Go on, try to work with you. Hello? Hello?
Yeah, man?
Yeah, go on, talk.
Yeah, man. I'm not in Jamaica right now. I'm in the States.
Yeah.
Yeah. So when I talk about things, like I talk about a few years ago, I called and talked to Musa about the Zodiac, and people I call and say, what the boy that go with the Zodiac thing? I try to tell them before that the Bible is about the macrocosm and the microcosm. The macrocosm is the heaven. The microcosm is the human being. And the Bible the whole Bible deals with the zodiac of the macrocosm and the microcosm. And people come to me from parents session, what about the zodiac thing, and all this foolishness, you know what I mean? I'm hearing these people saying these things, And the thing is, without them studying the thing, they're ready to jump on my case about me saying about the zodiac. And every ancient book, because I spent a lot of money on books, and every book that I look at, it talks about the microcosm and the macrocosm, the zodiac, all right? And zodiac came from the word zoology, meaning that this planet is an animal planet. You know what I'm saying? And these, I don't know what they call it, human beings. They are all animals. Every organ that's in every animal is inside of us. So we're just a two-legged animal. And, they call me before, say, boy, they're bald, know nothing. That hit me, fooled you, all those stupid things, people, they on this radio station without checking it out. Roger, if I come to you and show you something that you've never seen before, it is outside of the circumference of your intelligence, or outside of the circumference of your awareness.
All right, brother, may I try work with you, but may I struggle bad for area. Bad. I don't know Me I try, but it not so audible at all. I don't know where there is to affect it.
Me hear, boss. Sorry about that.
Yeah.
Is it better now?
All right, so just wrap up now. Give me a summary as to where I say now. Because your line not so good.
What I'm trying to say, Bridget, is this. You know, I heard one of the brothers on the line, a couple of brothers before me said this and all. Don't approach a thing with emotions.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying? You know, which makes logical sense. That's why I applaud them. In fact, all the callers, I applaud them because these brothers make a lot of sense.
Yes.
The thing is, if I come to you about something that you have never learned before, in fact, I tell you something, people, to this very day, people don't realize that, okay, there is something sacred that's inside of the human being, which I'm not going to say on this radio station.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to say that till people learn to humble themselves to knowledge. There is something that is inside of us that is birthed every month inside both man and woman. And by the way, man and woman is the same creature anyway. They're just the opposite of each other. And many people don't even understand that.
Yeah.
Anytime you kiss a man, woman, anytime you kiss a man, you kiss a man and a woman. When you kiss a woman, you kiss a man and a woman. Because both of them are inside of each other.
All right, thanks for the knowledge here. Thanks for the knowledge. We're off a run. We have struggle for area, bud. All right?
No problem. Thank you.
All right. Yeah, man. Cutting edge here on IRE FM. We are almost in the home stretch of the program. We have been here from 10 o'clock. Black consciousness. Yeah. Here's a Rasta man. I beg you to stop the fussing and the fighting, Rasta. But boy, we don't know when we're going to stop it. Greetings. Yeah. Yeah, man. Y'all listen to the radio, man.
Yeah, man. Yeah, you're clearly the right.
Yeah, go ahead. No, go on talk.
Greetings, right.
Greetings.
You know, I personally talk on the program for years.
Yeah. See, respect.
You know, it's a vacation with the pan of terror. Go 2 weeks vacation. What was my work still?
Okay. Which part you there now? Where you live? Exchange. Oh, up the road, that's all.
Yeah, man, you had a tremendous work. I love educated people, you know?
Yeah, man, respect. Give thanks.
I'm mother to all the mothers.
Yes.
Man, I can understand, and all the fathers will be mothers as well.
Right.
And I heard the minister of health talking about fitness. But he said nothing about liberty of Rastafari. They are doing to the children. You know? Jamaica is a basic place for Rasta.
Yeah?
But the politician and minister don't care after that.
Leaders mind warp, man.
You're gone far. They can't see the truth, and they don't talk here. The minister talk about wellness and fitness. He doesn't talk about nothing about the Rastafari liberty. All the meat that come out of the country, they don't live GMO and time. But this radio station, me tell you, man, number one.
Yes, man.
Number one, I love it.
Mm-hmm.
And continue to do great work.
Yeah, man. Yeah, man. I agree. I mean, we have to find a way in terms of Rastafari liberty, in terms of even, you know, the conscious way of thinking.
I'm about it, you know.
Yeah. We understand what I say, but I mean, it's true. I mean, in terms of what we consume is what sending us quickly to our graves, you know.
Yeah, that's what
and there are certain things now that we need to adapt. We need to adapt, you know, everyday lifestyle. Where that's why Rastafari is so important, because Rastafari come and them teach the nation. It's up to you if you know take heed to some of the teachings, and some of the teachings are so important in terms of even our heat, you know, and our natural liberty.
Natural liberty, we have put everybody come out, you know.
Yeah, so
food can be minister, can be a poison.
Yeah, so these things do help, you know. Yeah, the orthodox Rastafari lifestyle.
Yeah.
Yeah, because we know you have the unorthodox Rastafari lifestyle, and you have the left and the right, and you know, once we hear the king still, we're good, you know, but we don't know, so there's an orthodox way.
I feel. Mama was for the crime thing still.
Yeah.
We like man to stop killing a young girl, man, stop killing themselves.
Yeah, we in a trouble. Society in a trouble. We start when we turn from our pit them our girl children. Yeah. It's like say you block up one. It's like say you block up one place, but when you block up one place, a next hole open up somewhere. It's like the dike. You know. Because we not address the root of our problems, man.
The social problems.
Social and the justice. Social and justice. Yeah.
There's so much injustice in the labor force. Some guys supposed to work 8 hours per week, they're working 48. Nobody says a crime.
Yeah, sometimes just extension of the whole slavery thing, you know, will come down.
You know what goes on comes down.
Yeah, so it's just a modern day kind of thing where we have to just keep on a fight, just keep on a fight.
You can't get the trouble.
You know?
You can't get the.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes you have to just accept, you know, you have to just fight for a future generation. For a better life for a future generation. Because remember, I said those before us, so then we fight for where we are, you know, and we give thanks to that. So, as we always say, we stand on the shoulders of those who gone ahead of us.
You have to keep the fire burning.
Yeah.
You have to keep it burning.
I hear the Prime Minister the other day say we're destined to be a rich country, but corruption and the injustice and the system and the we don't know how far. I don't think him really serious when him say that.
Yeah.
All right.
I'm counting up with the good work.
Yeah, man. Bless.
God bless.
Fine. Greetings. Cutting edge.
Good morning.
Morning.
Yeah, man. You know, I just call this a boy. You know, Earth history.
You can talk a little louder. You can.
Yeah, I'm saying that the man know that Earth history have been circumvented.
Come again. Our history.
Yeah, Earth history.
Earth history.
Circumvented, man.
Yes.
And the Bible is one of them, you know.
Yes.
Yeah, man, because when man come talk about so-called God creator and Rasta, that people in Africa, you know, man.
Yeah, man. Africa older than all of them stories that we are seeing in the Bible.
Yeah, man. Before man come talk about the so-called God creator, black people in Africa Rasta.
Yeah, man. We are the civilizations.
Yeah, man. You know.
Cradle of civilization. It was already the cradle of civilization before man start right them thing there.
Yeah, man, you know see it. You know see it. Man come to lies about black people is a descendant. Black people in Jamaica is no descendant of Africa, Rasta. Black people is African in Jamaica.
Exactly. You're African. You're no descendant. You're African.
A man who born in Jamaica is a Chinese Rasta. In saying that Chinese living in Jamaica.
Exactly.
Likewise the Indian.
Yes.
The black man said that he's a Jamaican.
Yeah, man. The black man the Jamaican don't like to say him is African.
Yeah. Yeah, man. You know,
him look down and him scan it. Yeah.
You know, with black people, you're an African man. Descendant, you see the word descendant, it means moving, veering from the original, you know.
Yes.
Yeah. Anyway, you're a black man, you can't be a descendant. Black people can't be descendant.
No. Anyway at all, we're there.
Black African, you know, people.
You're African.
The Chinese and all the other race. They are descendants of I and I.
Yes. Well, it's to show say everything come out of Africa.
Yes, yeah, man, you see.
History and archaeology and anthropology and all of the ologies, sociology, everything shows that Africa.
This little book here, we're going to come talk about the Holy Bible. Of course, it's holy. It has thousands of holy nights.
Yes.
Because when a man went to Kemet and thief and I original writing, bring it to Rome, corrupt it, mutilate it and chop it up, mutilate it and chop it up here.
True.
And then I come to life, respect it. I say fire upon that, you know. I say fire upon that. Me are one African-minded person, Rasta, where a man can't come telling his stupidness, you know.
Saying.
Don't come to me now with that stupidness, Rasta. This little book here, this little stupid book here. So you can steal and hide things. Chop it up, corrupt it and mutilate it, and I come talk about say, I should respect that. I and I great grandson of slave. No fire upon that man.
All right, sir. All right. Give thanks.
Yes, man.
Give thanks.
Yes, I am.
Mm-hmm.